I think that with sexism, with any ism, I think the most important step is realizing what extremely subtle, deeply embedded thoughts you have yourself and admitting them. No one wants to do that. Everyone says, well, I'm not, like I don't profile, but we do.
You're listening to The Other 50%, a Her Story of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. This is the podcast where I talk to successful women in entertainment and hear their stories. This episode is brought to you by the entertainment payroll company Extreme Reach. They have the most comprehensive suite of tools and services to support all areas of media and content creation, from tax incentive support to accounting software and payroll services. I've seen their software. It's beautiful. If you're producing film and television, you should call them and tell them I sent you. And as a bonus, they are committed to including and promoting women, and I could not be happier that they are a sponsor of this podcast. For this episode, I sat down with Jacqueline, Legan, and Katie Koeblitz of the content studio called Apparentlyjack'S. They produce branded and unbranded original content that aims to represent intersectional audiences. They want their films to reflect the diverse world we live in because representation matters. They are deliberately inclusive both in front of and behind the camera. They are storytellers. We talked a lot about the emotional work of checking our own bias, the process of networking, and how we work for equity in the entertainment industry. You can find us at theother50%.com for added features, photos, show notes, and the merchandise. I just put in some great coffee tumblers and mugs. You can also listen on Apple Podcasts and all the podcast places. In fact, if you're trying to listen to it on a podcast platform and it's not there, let me know so I can make sure that it is there. And if you haven't already, check out our other two podcasts, The Kiss My Age Show, which is where women of a certain vintage, grown-ups, talk about anything and everything and all the things that matter. Hosted by Lasta Drakovic, Karen Samuelson, and me. And if you fall into that category, please join the Facebook group and join in the conversation. And Exit 38. It's a show where Emily Van Dyne and Sean Patrick Hughes, who seem to be opposites from a political perspective, discuss the issues of the day while trying to find common ground. Okay, here's my conversation with Jacqueline, Legan, and Katie Koeblitz. Have a listen. So I am here with Apparently Jack, and I'm going to have you identify your voices so people know who's talking. So Jacqueline, say hello.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline.
And you are the founder of Apparently Jack.
Yes.
And Katie.
Hello, I am the head of original content at Apparentlyjack'. Did I get that right?
We've been saying independent, but original is the same thing.
Where am I?
What's your title today?
Whatever she wants it to be.
Head of independent content.
What is Apparently Jack?
Apparently Jack is a content studio based in Los Angeles, California, with a focus on telling new stories from new voices and championing inclusivity, inequality, and diversity, trying to pair people who might have stories that are underrepresented with brands in order to amplify their voices. And we also have independent content, which we all know Katie heads up. And
I especially know that.
These are more like short films or features that we believe have the same, moral goal as, the rest of the branded content thing, but original, independent.
Independent. All right, we're even.
I love that. And we all know why that's important, but why is that important?
Because representation matters. Well, that's just a quote right out of like a social media post. Hashtag representation matters. No, it does. I mean, if you can't see yourself on screen, if you don't hear a story that relates to you, if you, have never seen anyone like you on television or in the movies, then it, marginalized people deserve to be represented because they shouldn't be marginalized.
Because they exist and we should see them.
Yeah, because it's the world. We want the world that, is real, and we want to represent everyone in the world because that's how we get to learn about different cultures, different types of people, different issues in the world. That's how we are able to take a step forward to start healing.
It's funny, I worked with a female director probably 2 years ago now. Her name's Melanie Laurent. She's an amazing actress turned director. Probably one of the most talented directors I've ever worked with. And it sort of felt like I understood the concept of being able to model yourself after someone or mirror after someone as a theory, but working with her, side by side for 3 months, something totally shifted in me. So I'm like 29 years old and finally understanding for the first time that if I see a woman direct, I can picture myself directing instantly. Like, it's wild, the power of it.
Because you can see how it's done.
It's that simple because you can visually see that person who you can align yourself with accomplishing that. Suddenly, it's so much more accessible.
It's so simple and so powerful.
It's so simple.
Was she different from male directors you'd worked with, and how?
Definitely, yeah. She was, she's hyper creative, wildly intelligent, and very decisive. A lot of directors are like that. She was also totally collaborative. Mm-hmm. So while she had all of those gifts and was so suited to the job, she was ready at any minute to sit and listen to your input and the whole team's input and rethink what she had in mind, which she had put a lot of thought into.
Which also speaks to a certain level of confidence.
Definitely. Yeah.
Now, let's talk about your backgrounds a little bit and how you came to this. Jacqueline.
Sure. Well, growing up, I was absolutely positive I was going to be an actress. So I trained my entire life for it. I studied at South Coast Repertory Theater. I did summer theater camps. In high school, I did Stanford Repertory Theater or Conservatory. And then I got a BA in theater. So,
Where'd you go?
I started 2 years at Sarah Lawrence, and then I transferred to USC, which is where I got my BA.
And where'd you grow up?
I grew up, I was born in New Jersey.
Which exit?
Actually don't know. I was born in Morristown, but I know that's the thing, but I don't even remember at any point. I was in Peapack Gladstone, and then we moved to Costa Mesa for about 2 years, and then I was in Montana for 4th through 8th grade, and then back down to Newport Coast for high school, and then 2 years college in New York, 2 years here, and I've been in LA since 2005.
Oh, you went everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay, so then
it's very helpful, actually.
Oh,
it's part of the trajectory of my life comes from being around so many different types of people, different socioeconomic backgrounds, people under different circumstances, people who come from different places, and being able to see that they all exist. It's like if you grow up in a bubble, you perpetuate that bubble, I think. But if you really understand that there are so many different types of people and backgrounds and, opportunities given to some that aren't given to another, then, that's, I have no words. I don't know how to finish that.
It's diversity in action, it sounds like.
Exactly.
So then after college, did you come to LA to act?
Yeah, so I graduated USC here, and then I decided that I was going to continue, pursuing my dream of being in film, because it's always been film that, I was in theater growing up, but film was the end goal. I just like the proximity of the camera and the intimacy of it. But I became a nanny, so I could go out on all of those auditions.
As you do.
As you do. I didn't go out on a single audition, as you do. And then, once the kid was old enough to go to school for the first time, they didn't need me full time, so I ended up getting a part-time job at an advertising agency. Even walking in on my first interview day, I said, just so you know, I'm an actress, and I intend on keeping part-time so that I can go out on auditions. I respect that you love what you do, but I'm not into advertising. I never have been, so there you go. They still hired me, and 3 weeks later, they hired me full-time instead. And then, 7.5 years later, I ended up leaving because it was time to move on, but one of the partners there was filming a movie, and I came on as his assistant while keeping my duties at the ad agency, and we made this feature over the course of 2 years. It was really 3 months, and then we did rewrites the second year, but I fell in love with producing, so, I ended up associate producing that feature, and then we just kept trying to do more video for the company, commercials, branded content, and then eventually when I exited that company, I was the head of video production for them. So
pretty quickly you were like, oh, this is for me after all.
Yeah. I mean, I still love acting. It's, still something that I'd love to have the time to be able to like go take a class just to keep that muscle working. But I prefer to be from the ground, from the very concept to delivery. I like overseeing the entire thing, making sure that the creative vision is carried through, making sure we have the right people on set. The point of this company is to really be able to hire the people that we want to hire, be inclusive in the hiring behind the camera, and allow that, representation that Katie was talking about. If you can see it, you can be it. So that's important.
Oh, so then how did you transition from working on that film and being at that company to then starting your own company? Or was there something in the middle?
There was a brief something in the middle where I was the head of video production for another ad agency that had, when I started, originally pulled me on to create a production company, sister company for that ad agency. And then, every step I took, it became clear that they weren't ready for that and they were going in a different direction. So I quit 9 months later, and, I was in a very fortunate position within my own personal life where it allowed me to quit and say, all right, well, I'm going to do this because it's important to me to have a company that I believe in and that I can keep doing until, I'm past retirement age and I'm like, oh, I want to make this great film because this needs to be said. So, work that into the company.
So smart. Did you start it just by yourself?
I started the company with my father, who comes from investment banking and the financial world.
Oh, handy.
Yeah, so that has been great. That's where I started.
Katie, what's your background?
So I'm in the 1% of Los Angeles residents who never wanted to act. Never was interesting to me.
That's weird.
I had one line in a Charlie Brown play when I was in 4th grade, and I nearly had a panic attack. And I was just like, "Hi, Snoopy, how you doing?" Like, ran away. I hated it. I wanted to be in a band.
Well, sure.
But never acting.
You're like, no, this is not for me.
No, just never. I never took to that. I did take to always having my dad's video camera with me and, creating silly stuff with my friends and my siblings. We were the crocodile hunter for many summers in a row where we would, remember the crocodile hunter, Steve Irwin?
Yeah.
We would
it
run
didn't
around
end
and
well
make
for
our
him.
own. No. It didn't. I know.
Where'd you grow up?
Time. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. So always wanted to create visual content, basically. Always thought of the world in that way. I went to school in Philadelphia at UPenn, graduated in 2009 when the economy was in a really tough place.
Yeah, that's a real good time to start.
Yeah. They say those of us who graduated then will never make the amount of money that we should make because we're complacent.
You're starting
now.
behind?
Yeah, because we don't expect much. It's a fun study.
They're not hungry, they just gave up.
Yeah, they just gave into the system. So I moved back to Cleveland. I grew up in a world in Cleveland that was sort of like, you will grow up to get out of here kind of a thing.
Oh.
Yeah, some people grew up in Cleveland to stay there, but our little world was like, you're going to live in New York or LA, basically, or Chicago. A lot of people go to Chicago.
This was your family or your group
I would
of friends?
say like my school, like the school that I went to, that was sort of the thing. It's an interesting phenomenon.
Yeah.
And I actually ended up rejecting that. I moved back to Cleveland, A, because I had to, and B, because I was like, Cleveland's having a little renaissance here. Like, there's money coming into downtown, like, things are sort of booming, and, like, I can make a life here. I can make this happen. I worked retail at the Apple store for 2 years while I was trying to get, like, any gig. So Ohio has a tax incentive for film production. So when I moved home, I thought, I tried to apply for jobs in New York or LA for like probably 6 months, and then decided, okay, there's a tax incentive here, I'm going to try to make a go of it here and like build up my resume in Cleveland, which I never expected to do, but was really excited about it. So I took this job at the Apple store, which was a really tough job. I'm going to tip my hat to the employees of the Apple store right now. You're just always moving, like you're always on the go.
It's busy.
Yeah, I'll say they overschedule you, and they sort of like you're very customer facing. It's always your fault if someone's computer or phone isn't working or they don't know how to use it.
Oh
And
yeah, that's hard.
people get emotional about that and intense, and yeah, it's a lot. So I did a bunch of research. So sort of like now I've made the decision. I'm in Cleveland.
Was there any production happening?
Yeah, there were a lot of like superhero movies coming to Cleveland at the time. Oh. Yeah, some Avengers work, and like thriller-y type of stuff. Mm-hmm. It was sort of an easy city to shut down for big, freeways and roads. And so I decided I was going to like hunker in and plant my roots there. And I did a bunch of research, and I saw this film called Take Shelter that had won at Cannes at maybe 2008, and it was a beautiful movie. I can't recommend it enough.
You've never mentioned that to me before.
Yeah.
It was only her life-changing
She didn't want me to see it. You should see it.
Like Jessica Chastain's Breakout and Michael Shannon, directed by Jeff Nichols, and these two guys from Cleveland had produced it. So now I have a goal. My goal is to hunt down these people.
Meet those guys.
And to work for them. So I did that, very intentionally and like semi-aggressively, like lots of emails and calls. And
how'd you find it?
I think I initially contacted, I reached out to both of them. It's Bob, so Bob and Tyler are the two guys. Bob got back to me eventually because I saw him at the Apple store.
Huh.
Yeah, I had emailed him. He had ignored my email for like 6 months. And then somehow like saw him at the Apple store and was like, I think had maybe like briefly seen him from, I knew what he looked like. Maybe I'm just a full-blown
that's the guy
stalker.
I'm trying to talk to.
But he also kind of knew, I don't know how this worked, I don't remember, but bugged him at the Apple store when he came in to fix his computer, and he said, I have this pilot if you want to basically come work on it for free or for, whatever I can give you. And I'm like, great, let's do it.
Yes, please.
Mm-hmm. And it was always like shifting around my schedule, getting people to cover shifts, as I was taking whatever job I could. So I ended up basically working for Bob and Tyler separately. They sort of fell out after we all did one feature together called Kings of Summer. Maybe.
It's a great movie.
Yeah, it's a really good one. They stopped working together, and I sort of said, I'm going to continue to work for both of you independently, and that's going to be okay for everyone because I need to work.
You're just going to handle it.
You're just going to handle it. And I really, like, for the next basically 6 or 7 years, did work with both of them.
In
Cleveland, yeah, and like pretty cool stuff, like work that I'm really proud of. We went to festivals and got distribution and made really great work.
And at some point they started paying you.
Yeah, they did. At some point they started paying me. It's indie film, so it's, getting paid is a relative term, but you're not making $0. And they've both been, mentors to me throughout this whole process.
That's great.
Yeah.
How'd you make it out here?
So after doing, being in Cleveland for like 6.5, 7 years, we did this feature called The Land. Also a great film, directed by Stephen Cable Jr., who just directed Creed 2, Creed reboot. And it was sort of at that point that I felt like, okay, it's time for me to, when I'm done with The Land, it's time for me to go. I had an opportunity, so The Land was with Tyler. Then Bob called and said, I have this documentary coming through called G-Funk. It's about the G-Funk era of hip-hop. Can I like ship you out to LA for a couple months to work on it?
Yes,
and
please.
This was my life, I was always kind of running around. So I said, yeah, and this time I'm going to like pack really heavy. I'm going to put my stuff in storage and rent my place and go. Just like take 4 big bags and really go. So I did, and so now I've been here for like 2.5 years.
So you stayed?
Stayed.
And then how did you two meet each other?
We met through Women in Film they have a quarterly coffee where you go and just sort of mingle.
Yep. I was, I've been forcing myself since I started this company to network and be okay with walking up to strangers and saying, like, sure, I'm an actress, so I always have been able to be friendly. Growing up, I talked to the person on the plane next to me, but then slowly that kind of died away, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to be my own little hermit.
Quick note, I was at a football game last weekend, and the guy was wearing a t-shirt that said, I used to be a people person, and then people ruined it.
Yes!
I was like, yes!
I need that t-shirt! Oh my God, that's great!
It's so relatable.
It's so relatable.
Yeah.
So I went to this quarterly coffee. It was early in the morning on the wrong side of town for me, and had, they had bagels and coffee, but the bagels
I was
were
there for
almost
the
gone.
bagels.
Yeah. You were
I
there
had eaten them all.
You would, they were gone. And then there was, just the coffee, and I saw a circle of women. I'm like, I'm going to go interrupt that circle. And I did one of those awkward moments. You weren't there yet, I don't think. So I did one of those awkward moments where I just, inserted myself and was Hi guys, so I'm going to be awkward and just join your conversation right now. So we started going around the circle saying, who we are, and then Katie walked up with someone else, and, the heavens opened up, the music came, and I was like, this is why I'm here. So we met there, and we immediately exchanged information, and we started small with, lunches or coffees here and there, and then, pretty soon it was, we were talking every day, and we were working on things together because, we've been inseparable ever since. Everything, I always say that I don't believe in regrets, because if you regret something and it were to change, you wouldn't be where you are today. And so, it's amazing those little times that something, went right because you were in the wrong place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's, or a place you didn't want to be.
All of it is leading you to where you need to go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So.
but I do think it's so important to, that comment you made about just, pushing yourself to network. We met each other in a time when we were both endlessly, tirelessly networking. You're dragging yourself out across town for a screening followed by a Q&A that you're hoping to meet someone at in the lobby afterward. You go to all these things. It's like dating. There are so many bad dates. And when you look back at it, you're like, oh, it's cool, we just met each other. But that day-to-day grind is so relentless that I think it's always so important to talk about that, because, when you're in the middle of those moments of okay, it's been 3 months and I've been networking my ass off and nothing's happening. It's so much patience.
And a lot of self-talk, I think, to be like, all right, I am going to go. Because at 6 o'clock when you're looking at traffic, it's the last thing you want to do is get in your car and go.
I'm not even looking at traffic. I'm looking at my bed going, oh, I could be there right now.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so let's talk about networking for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
What is your strategy when you go to network? Are you thinking, I'm going to go meet one person, 2 people, I'm going to go work the room? How are you looking at it?
It depends on what type of networking event it is. I have several that I go through that I try and look for. One is female-led panels with a ton of people there, and we've got food and wine for you, do all of this. And then there's the industry-specific things like screenings with Q&As, film independents, director series, and then there's the just coffee meetup type things. Normally the women panel ones, I'm there to force myself to introduce myself to one of the panelists, not necessarily the people who are there.
Mm-hmm.
And then
let's talk about that for a minute, because I go to those too, and then I write down who the panelist is, and I think, I'll email them later, invite them to be on the podcast, but I never go up and introduce myself because there's always a line and I don't know what to say. So how do you get up in there?
I wait for the lines to completely subside, and usually I walk up, I introduce myself, I say, thank you so much, this was great, excellent. I know you've been through a long line right now, I just wanted to introduce myself and get your email, maybe I can send you something later. Just so that they have that facial recognition, oh yeah, that was the girl who came at the end.
Who brought me a coffee.
Was respectful of my time and didn't, start telling me all about the stuff that she wanted me involved with, or anything like that. It's just a brief no.
Right.
Pitching anyone at any networking event, I find never works.
Terrible.
It's terrible. When you're on the opposite end, you're like, you're not respecting my time right now.
You don't want to be pitched to when you're just trying to meet people. So, I go to, meet people. If there's someone interesting in the audience, sure, I'll talk to them. I'll try and think, oh, what are they, how can I connect? It ends up being that, I go to network to try and find clients, and I find people I want to hire. That's more often than not, they're also going to networking events, and they want to be, you know, a director, and so right now they're doing, you know, AC work, and they want to do something. Like, they're great. Let's hire them on the next one for something. So I keep in touch that way. When it comes to coffee events, I don't go to those anymore. I met Katie, so that was like...
You're done.
I'm done with coffee events.
For life.
That was all I needed. And then in terms of networking for the bigger sit-down Q&As, that was all a lie, because that's not actually networking for me. I go to ignore everybody in the audience and just learn from whatever they're saying, and then take that elsewhere.
Yeah, I think being really fluid and open, you know, when you're networking is a good idea.
Yeah. So you might be totally surprised
Exactly.
why you're there and who you meet.
Yeah. Basically, I don't choose events unless I want to see someone who's speaking, you know, because you don't go in with the intention, I'm going to meet 5 people. I don't even go in saying I'm going to meet one person, because maybe I don't, but I make sure that whoever the panelist is, I'm there to listen to them, and I'll learn something.
Yeah, and if you've got your blinders on, like, oh, I'm here to meet this one person, and you have no idea that if you struck up a conversation with the person next to you, that was going to be actually a really great fit, you know, that can impede your ability to meet people.
Yeah.
So I think being open is good. I also think there's sort of like a time and place for a lot of events. Like, if you're going to events that are like, hey, I'm a creative, how do I get more clients? That's helpful to an extent. You can meet other people, you can again mirror with them, you can help each other, but then to an extent you're all looking at each other saying, how do I get clients? How do I get clients? How do I get clients?
There aren't any clients in the room.
When in fact you could go to a panel for small businesses about how do I find video? How do I market my business? You can flip that and be the person in the room that is offering the service that everyone is looking for. So I think it's important to balance that, and sort of like with any networking event or sort of like group chat, you know, it's since basically 2016, there's been such a surge in women getting together and talking. And it's amazing. It's a time in my life I'll never forget. Like, this has been such a powerful moment. But there also comes a point for, I think, everyone, where we look around and say, okay, we've talked a lot. We've gotten this through our system. What are we doing now?
Yeah.
So, like, moving from the theory and the talk, which is so important, to the action. So I think that applies for networking as well. Like,
and including men in that discussion.
Okay, let's talk about all of that. What do you think the action is, and how do you think we include men?
Well, for me, I think that I personally struggled for a long time with being distrustful toward white men, honestly, and having to realize that anger in myself and realize that was a prejudice and move past that. You know, like catching myself having moments of looking at my boyfriend like, do I trust him? You know, this person who I share my life with and I trust implicitly and I love, and, you know, having this tensing up, basically.
Well, it is this weird moment we're in, and this is, just say we're doing this the week of the Kavanaugh thing and the Dr. Ford thing, and there is such rage, and such palpable rage among women, and we are still in the world with men, and hashtag not all men, and how do we kind of resolve that?
Yeah.
That's interesting, because I've never had that issue with, you know, looking at people and saying you know, I'm not going to trust this person because I'm not saying that that's what you're saying, but you know what I mean? Like, I've never had a distrust, you know. I know a lot of white men. My problem is more, why are they the first people to get the job offer? Why are they the first person, you know, you go to hire when there are so many other people, different, you know, people of color, people with disabilities, people, you know, women, you know, there's so many other people who are at the top of their game for their position and they're just not offered the job.
Why are they not the first call?
Exactly. So, you know, I've just had to balance, you know, consciously who's going to be my first call, you know, and sometimes it is the white man, you know, because for that particular project, that's who it is. But I think that a big issue is if there's all white men on a set, it's because somebody hired the first white man who then hired the other people that he knows and works with who are all white men.
Yeah, they just didn't think about it very hard.
Exactly. So it starts at the top of that's why I love being able to be the person who does choose who's involved, because you can give people opportunity. And so I think the discussion, this is specific to the entertainment industry, not necessarily how do we change, the patriarchy. But
burn it down, obviously.
within the industry, I think that people need to meet other people and try out other people. I had a DP once who I asked him to bring on a female camera team. Well, I don't know any, and I was like, great, let me bring them on.
Yeah,
and
I'll introduce you. Not
he uses
they
them all
don't
the time
exist.
now. It's they're his go-to, not his
Great.
white man friends. So it's about having the studio or the production company or the creative agency, whoever it is. It starts, I think, at the top, and their hiring practices need to change.
And is it just a matter of making a different conscious decision? Is it that easy?
That's part of it.
Might be.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. I mean, just working constantly to challenge. I think that with sexism, any ism, I think the most important step is realizing what extremely subtle, deeply embedded thoughts you have yourself and admitting them. No one wants to do that. Everyone says, "Well, I'm not." I don't profile, but we do.
We all do, and it's painful.
Yeah, not because we're bad, not because we're evil, because we grew up in a society that did.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not, it's not a judgment to make upon yourself. It's a moment to look at, wow, what thought is behind this? Where did this come from? Where did I learn this? How can I unlearn this? I remember once getting on a plane and so I'm very afraid of flying. Mm-hmm. So I was in animal lizard brain, fear mode, walking onto a plane and saw a female pilot and got scared.
Wow.
Yeah. And I hate saying
it's deep
that.
And it's unconscious.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm like a drum beating, I'm a huge feminist,
Yeah.
to the point that my mom's like, you tone it down a little bit sometimes. But I had this thought, and instead of pushing it down, I really tried to look at it. Like, I tried to talk to people about
what's
it,
that about?
Be open about it, and dissect it, because that
the discussion needs to be had.
And it's embarrassing, and it makes me feel like a sellout, and I hate it.
Bad feminist.
Exactly.
It's part of that representation, though. Like, before you met Melanie, not really seeing yourself as a director. And
exactly.
then, once you had that, all the images going back, as far as pilots go, it's Leonardo DiCaprio and Catch Me If You Can, like, surrounded by all the female,
right.
And
attendants.
it's Sully who saved everybody landing in the water.
That's
you
the
see
thing.
men as pilots.
Yeah, and without trying to play the victim here, it's that fine line, not judging yourself but not being a victim. But, like, we have been the recipients of these images. So our brain has learned them. That's how the brain works. It's that simple. So looking at that and being like, okay, I challenge this. Instead of getting emotional, instead of hating myself, burying this deep, making myself angrier, I just had a bad thought about a female pilot, that I trusted her less than a male pilot. Ouch, that hurts. That sucks.
Yeah.
Let's work through it. Similarly.
Yeah, you don't have to go into a shame spiral.
No, just look at it. Just get through it. Same thing with a female sound person, a female cinematographer. Like, we just don't see it, and so we have to challenge ourselves to see it.
Yeah.
Work through it. I think eventually the onus is on each of us individually to do that work.
It takes a lot of self-awareness.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about, some things are personal too, where people can't see. That's why stereotypes exist, because you have one relationship with one person and then you assume that it's everyone. And that goes so far that anybody who has been attacked or bit by a pit bull in their life are terrified of pit bulls, and they will never. Fine with other big dogs with big teeth and, who might be, angry, but because of that one, they're all bad. Like, they have to avoid all of them. And that, translates to human beings too,
It does. I'll tell you, I am divorced from a black man. I can't tell you how many people have asked me, would you ever marry a black man again?
Oh, God.
And I say, you would never ask me that if I was divorced from a white guy. Like, I would never date another white guy. Think about what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Because if something is the exception, if you're used to seeing male director, and there's a female director and she messes, not F's, something up, all the attention is on that.
You get one chance.
Yeah, you had this one chance, you messed one thing up, and so now the magnifying glass is on
You
that.
must be perfect.
Yeah.
That's why it discourages so many people to join, to follow their careers or, their dreams to careers, because you can't make one mistake. That's not cool.
Did we address how to bring men into the conversation? And I actually have a question for you. Are you guys millennials?
I don't know.
I'm the very top of the millennial that shouldn't be considered millennial, like that weird, like they say millennial.
Like in between?
Yeah, I'm the in between because I was born in 85,
Mm-hmm.
and I think they call millennials like 87 or 88, and then some are like 84, but it doesn't quite work that way.
I think we're both technically millennials, but
millennials, when you're marketing to them, are younger than us.
yeah.
Okay.
I don't identify as a millennial.
I don't
relate
I
to
hear you
that.
guys not really owning that label. But I'm asking because are you finding that the men, oh yeah, sure, please, more water. That's what you hear. We're pouring some fizzy water because it's a party.
It is.
Can you hear that?
Katie and I have wine glasses for our physio.
As you should. Do you find that the men you grew up with and the men of your generation are different from the older men that we're seeing in the culture?
Well, I do,
Depends.
for the people that I grew up with, but then you have to remember that I went to very independent schools. I went to private schools, and I went to Sarah Lawrence, for 2 years. So the men I was surrounded by, who were my age, were all independent thinkers. They're all very progressive. They're, they care about women. That was the situation in which I was placed. If I think back to times when I lived in Montana, those people are not. They're very much like the older men that I know. Mm-hmm. Just because of the region, the politics that are passed down from their parents. I would say, yes and no. It depends on where they're from.
So how do you think we engage the Montana man in this struggle for equality and representation and feminism?
It's a very challenging question. To actually answer your question, I think the number one way to involve men in this conversation is to start by not framing them as the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
This is a systemic issue, like racism. Sexism is systemic, and this has been programmed in all of us for a really long time. So again,
we've all been brought up in it.
We were all brought up in it, and again, it's not that we have no responsibility. We do, but we're also not bad because we've learned these things. So starting, I think, with that approach, and instead of fuck the white man, saying hey, I understand that you probably feel these ways because of the experiences that you've had. Let's try to work through that. Starting from there is the most important thing.
I would also say that, how do you expose or change the, and by the way, I love Montana. They're not it's not everybody, but
Hashtag not all
follow
Montana.
along with the same thing. How do you change the Montana man's opinion about, all this? It's the women too.
Yeah.
It's not just
Good point.
the white men.
We all saw that video last night on CNN.
It's the white.
And that's everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's the women too. It's anybody who has any kind of issue with somebody that doesn't look just like them. It's them too, It's not just saying it's all one race and gender. It's like Katie said, it's systemic, and it's about the past and how people are dealing with it moving into the future.
Yeah, I think too, how Jack opened that up with this isn't everyone in Montana. I think this geographical thing we have going on is the third most powerful. So we have racism, then sexism. I don't want to rank those against each other, but racism is worse.
Yeah.
And then this geographic othering.
City versus country.
And that's, growing up in Cleveland, I got so much of that, and so much of this totally stupid, oh, your city's a piece of shit. Why?
And why does that how does that relate to you?
How
Just
does that
because you
relate
live there?
to me?
Yeah.
And why is that
And
a judgment? And why have we gotten here?
And cities are filled with people who moved from someplace else.
Exactly. We're all people. We all have the ability to be interesting, thoughtful, and in fact, some of the smartest, most interesting people, most hardworking, wonderful people I've ever met are from Cleveland. Like, that's my home, and
now you said something radical.
You know, and like being out here, I'm exposed to that. I am a progressive, liberal feminist, and I meet a lot of people who I'm like, you're a coastal elitist. You have no awareness. You have no perception. You know, and I don't think that's okay. It's not.
Agreed.
It's not cool. Like we think it's okay because it's on trend. We're on like the cool side, but it's not. It's so wrong. It's just another way of othering.
Okay, so give us hope. What do we do?
Watch our videos, watch our content.
Way to bring it back around.
Give us money to keep making these these shorts. You know, we've got amazing stories to tell and people who have written them and amazing people, but it's really hard if you can't find, you know, the money, because the money's going to superheroes. My moment of hope is just continuing to see people having the discussion and working together to try and move forward. That's what the hope is. You know, I mean, it's as long as people are still having the discussion, hope is not lost. The minute they stop and become complacent and say, oh, well, this is where we're living, this is it, that's when you lose all hope.
Does this feel like a unique moment?
Definitely.
Where we do have some momentum?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, these are all, you know, I think all three of us are sitting in a place of extreme privilege in so many ways, most ways, except for the female thing. So that's a unique position to be in, to have overwhelming privilege, but to have always understood that you're in a sexist world and people are looking at you as a sex object. And, you know, growing up being in our industries, we've been around that forever. So I think, for me anyway, it feels like so much evil has been unearthed, and things that we all knew and were forced to just keep inside of ourselves or sort of, you know, whisper to each other. It's all out there in like a really ugly, constant reminder way that we're forced to confront all the time. So while we're sort of like feeling sort of hopeless sometimes, or like we're all at odds with each other, or we're in a tough time, like it's like therapy. Like, again, you got to get it out to work through it. So we're that much further ahead.
It does feel like layers of an onion.
Yeah.
Just when we think, okay, we've talked about that, then comes the next layer. We're like, oh, now we're going to start talking differently about how boys and girls relate to each other in high school and how that affects you.
Yeah, definitely. And it's easy to get exhausted by the conversations and think,
Yes.
oh God, everything's PC. But like, again, challenging yourself to push through that is important. I think hope too comes in supporting anyone who's trying. So we're trying, you know, we're trying to represent more people visually.
We've had this discussion, you know, we do recognize our privilege as white women, and being able to, upper middle class white women at the moment, we have the opportunity to amplify other voices and help other people get to our position or higher.
So important. Do you have any advice for young people just starting out?
Well, Nike stole my slogan with "Just Do It."
You invented
so
that.
rude.
I took it.
It's totally my idea. But, you know, check yourself. In terms of what? In terms of the industry getting someplace, or in terms of being a human being?
Oh, both.
I would say check yourself. You know, try and always be aware. Try and educate yourself about things that are not in front of you every day. And in terms of the industry, be like Katie. Go out and like find the people, hunt them down, like be a part, do whatever you can to get on set and learn about all of the positions so that you know what, you know, might be right for you. You know, you go in saying, I want to be a director, and then you fall in love with the camera and, you know, the lighting, and you were meant to be a DP, not a director. You know, learn those things by being involved in any way you can.
There's so many jobs that you have never even heard of yet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I would say too, something that was beat into me so hard was always work. You know, just like head down, get the job done, work as much as you can. A super active approach to a very, you know, like to be a regionalist myself, like a very Midwestern, like just work your ass off until it pays off for you. But what I don't feel like I was taught so much because I wasn't around people in this industry was the patience part. That's something that I had to learn myself. So you're only in control of the work that you can do, that you have the opportunity to do. And so much of this is riding the wave of I'm all on right now for a certain period of time. I am working so hard. And then I'm on my couch, not for days or weeks. I'm on my couch for months and going to networking events and trying to get new work. Before teaming up with Jack, I was, eating what I killed for 10 years. Like, that's it. I didn't have a job. I was freelance. So, like, having that patience has become so important, and trusting that it's eventually going to come through. There's no pretty way to tie it up and have, like, a cute quote on a podcast, because it's an always evolving process of not being too passive, not being too active, not getting too frustrated, but not being complacent. Like, it's not easy to spell out. It's literally every day checking in with yourself and doing what you can and having peace with that, and also working hard.
Yeah, I would also say
to articulate it.
If you have one word of something to do to benefit your future, yourself, and your career, it's therapy. Everybody can benefit from therapy, and you should absolutely do it. Not just when you're, down or low or unemployed, all the time, if you can afford it, because, we know that the healthcare system doesn't necessarily afford that to everybody. And if you can't, find somebody that you can always talk to, because therapy is so important for everyone to learn more about themselves, to be able to recognize other things, to recognize their potential, to start thinking about the future. That I really believe, anyone should do it if they can.
Yeah, we're
Amen.
both proponents of that for sure. And it's such a privilege to go to therapy. Like, it's expensive, it takes time. But something that I like to tell people is that you can call, so psychologytoday.com is where you can find a list of therapists. And then you can call them and say, I'm not making money right now. I know you typically charge $250 a session. I can pay $150 a session. And they might say, like, after you call 10 people, one might say, I'll take you once a month for $100.
Isn't there an app now?
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Now there are apps. There's,
By the way, one of those apps, and I wish I remembered the name, is killing it with content.
Okay,
Yeah.
would you like to brag about some Apparently Jack projects?
yeah. There's so much we can't talk about.
I
'Cause
know,
it's
that's
like,
really frustrating, because
Can we see work that's out there on your website?
Yeah, apparentlyjack.com.
but there's no work on the website
I
yet.
know. It's, so many of our clients are, we're doing, like, internal work or stuff that's not ready to be front-facing
a lot of it's in post
yet.
right now, so we can't release that. But once we can, we can. Yeah, we did just partner with Nick's Teen. It's a teen underwear brand out of Toronto with the parent company Nick's Wear. They, are all inclusive for as far as sizing, everything. And the latest campaign was Bra Boss, where they have 5 influencer teens who helped design bras for their followers. They had a survey out saying, what are you looking for in your bra? And they got a great mix of girls. I mean, they have Monet Davis, who's a sports prodigy, the first female shutout pitcher of the Little League. And then she moved on to basketball, and now she's on to softball.
Oh my God.
You've got
She can just play anything?
Yeah, exactly. You've got Jazz Jennings, who has a TLC show called I Am Jazz. She's a huge trans activist. She's got her confirmation surgery, a month ago, but is the first trans woman spokesperson for an intimates brand. And she's a teenager, and she's amazing. You've got Bailey Madison, who's a very talented actress, Fiona Frills, who is a YouTuber, and Jessica Universe, who is a poet and YouTuber as well. But they're all extremely smart, strong little women, and we were very proud to be a part of that campaign.
Yeah. We're working with Treehouse Co-Living.
Yes.
That's in the works.
Yes.
Check
out their website.
What is that?
That is they're building a co-living apartment space from the ground up. So the idea behind that is to have smaller individual units that people live in and larger shared spaces. And really,
So you can live in a dorm forever?
yeah, they don't like to compare it to a dorm because it's like you really respect where you live. It's more, everything's nicer than a dorm. You're not
communal living.
Communal living, and it's like community dinner every other week is your only commitment. It's not a commune. They're not forcing you into it, but you're just highly encouraged to really know the people that you live with and to live with them instead of sort of seeing them in the hallway or the elevator and ignoring them, like really interacting as much as you can. So the building is built to maximize those interactions and those connections. And on top of the traditional application process, they're really looking for people who want to involve themselves with other people and combat this, really pervasive isolation and loneliness that a lot of people are facing.
That's kind of brilliant. It's
Yeah.
brilliant for retirement housing too.
Yeah, that's where they're going next.
Great.
Yeah, it just makes sense. And child rearing, they want to do that too.
Yes, please.
We're meant to be in little tribes, so they're helping to facilitate that. And we're coming up with a very cool video concept for it.
Nice.
For their big launch. Yeah.
Very excited.
Is there anything I didn't ask you about that I should have asked you about?
Contact us if you need, especially for younger people coming up. If they're looking for work or looking for advice, please reach out to us. If you want to employ us, please reach out to us.
Yes. If you
like
are
high
a company
quality-
that wants to really be inclusive and help amplify underrepresented voices, we have concepts for you. We have people for you. We have stories for you.
Yeah, and more broadly, if you're just a company that doesn't want to create a commercial, but a story, like a real high quality short film or series with interesting characters and plots that you're aligning with basically your customers on an ideological level, we could make something very cool.
Apparentlyjack.com.
Yes.
Thank you so much. This is such a good conversation.
Thank you.
Next
For
time we'll talk
having us.
about, the universe and where we're going in the world.
Okay.
You've been listening to The Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. I'd like to thank Jacqueline Legan and Katie Koeblitz for sharing their stories. And special thanks to Jay Rowe, Danny Rosner, and Allison McQuaid for the music. Please find us on your favorite podcast provider and leave a review. And of course, on our website, theother50%.com, all spelled out in letters, for added features, bios of our guests, and the merch. You can also follow us on all the social media platforms, and also go subscribe to Exit 38 and The Kiss My Age Show. Thanks for listening. See you next time.